Hi, welcome to the Gemara on Vav Amud Bet. We're starting from the Mishnah there. Only part of this video is going to be your homework because I'm going to do the whole section in one video. This is from sheet number 19, I believe. Matnitin, so the Mishnah says, Karu et Megillah ba'adar harishon v'nitzabra hashana, korinota ba'adar sheni. If you read the Megillah in the first month of Adar, and then the year was made into a leap year, so a second Adar was added, Korinota ba'adar hasheni, you have to reread the Megillah in the second month of Adar. Ein bein Adar harishon la'adar hasheni, ela kriyat Megillah u'matanot le'avyonim. There is no difference between the first Adar and the second Adar, except for reading Megillah and giving gifts to the poor. And the no difference here means no difference. I would interpret this as being no difference in significance, meaning you can do the mitzvot in the first month, you can do the mitzvot in the second month. There are mitzvot attached to Purim, which is the 14th or 15th of Adar, but you can do them on the 14th or 15th of Adar Rishon or Adar Sheni, with the exception of Kriyat Megillah and Matanot Levunim. Those mitzvot must be done specifically during the second month of Adar. Beginning the Gemara says, Hali inyan seder parshiot zeh v'zeh shavin. This is, I put this on your structure chart as the first assertion in the Gemara. The Gemara says, this implies, the Mishnah implies, that's the that that when it comes to Seder Parshiot, the two are equal. Seder Parshiot refers to the four Parshiot that are read in the month of Adar, Parshat Shkalim, Parshat Zachor, Parshat Parah, and Parshat HaChodesh. They have to be read during the month of Adar, and the 2 months are equal, meaning it doesn't matter, they're equal in significance, it doesn't matter in which month you read them. You can read them in Adar Rishon or in Adar Sheni. That's the implication of the Mishnah, since the Mishnah doesn't mention that as being something that's different between the 2 months. Mani matnitin, according to whom is our Mishnah? Lo Tanakama, v'lo Rabbi Eliezer b'Rabbi Yossi, v'lo Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. This is the first question, according to whom is our Mishnah, and the answer is sort of an answer, sort of a continuation of the question. It's not Tanakama, it's not Rabbi Eliezer b'Rabbi Yossi, and it's not Rashbag. Why not? Tanya, as we learned in the Braita, I've already put the Talmudic material in red for you here. Karu et Megillah ba'adar harishon v'nitzabra hashana, korinota ba'adar hasheni, shekol mitzvot shenohagot b'sheni nohagot b'rishon chutz mimikra Megillah. If you read the Megillah in the first Adar, and then the year became a leap year, you have to read it again in the second Adar, just the way our Mishnah starts, because all of the mitzvot that are enacted in the second month may also be done in the first month, with the exception of Mikra Megillah. You have to read Megillah again in the second month of Adar. That's the position of the Tanakama of the Braita. Rabbi Eliezer b'Rabbi Yossi says, second opinion in the Braita, Ein korinota ba'adar hasheni, shekol mitzvot shenohagot b'sheni nohagot b'rishon. You don't read it again, you don't read the Megillah again in the second Adar, because all of the mitzvot which are enacted in the second month of Adar can also be done in the first month of Adar. It doesn't make a difference. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says, in the name of Rabbi Yossi, Af korinota ba'adar hasheni. You should even read it again, or you should read it again in the second month of Adar. Shekol mitzvot shenohagot b'sheni eino hagot b'rishon. Because every mitzvah that is done during the second month of Adar may not be done during the first month of Adar. V'shavin behesped u'v'tanit shasurin zeh b'zeh uvazeh. But the months are comparable in the sense that they have the same restrictions against eulogizing and fasting. So both months have this sort of generally happy atmosphere, but you can only do the mitzvot, you can only fulfill the mitzvot by doing them in the second month of Adar. So now the Gemara has a problem with the Braita, which has nothing to do with our original question. It's a separate problem. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Hainu Tanakama. Sounds like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is basically the same as Tanakama. Okay, there are some slight differences, but they both say that you have to read Megillah again in Adar Bet. Amar Rav Papa. Rav Papa provides the answer to this question. Seder Parshiot Ika Beinahu. The difference between them is Seder Parshiot, is, again, the reading of these four Parshiot in the month of Adar. The Tanakama Savar, because the Tanakama holds L'charchila b'sheni. Initially, or ideally, you should do it before the fact. You should do it in the second month of Adar. V'yavud b'rishon avud. But if you did it in the first month, okay, it's done. Bar mikra Megillah, except for the reading of Megillah. Te'afal gav karu b'rishon karu b'sheni. So the Tanakama says it's okay b'diavad if you read the four parshiot in the first Adar, but you have to repeat Megillah in the second month of Adar. For Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi savar, afil mikra Megillah lechatchila barishon. And Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi, he's super permissive. He thinks that even Megillah, and so how much more so Seder Parshiot, can be read, even before the fact. You can decide you're going to read them in the first month of Adar, and you're done. You don't have to repeat anything. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel savar, afil Seder Parshiot, ikaru barishon, karu b'sheni. And Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel believes that even Seder Parshiot, if you read it in the first month, you have to do it in the second month. So he's the most extreme. You have to repeat everything, even Seder Parshiot, in month 2. So even though the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel both believe that you have to repeat Megillah in Adar Bet, the difference between them is Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel would even say you have to repeat Seder Parshiot in Adar Bet, and the Tanna Kama would not. Mani. Back to our original question. Okay, but whose opinion is reflected by our Mishnah? So now the Gemara is going to explain to you why actually it can't be any of these people. None of these opinions exactly match our Mishnah. Tanna Kama, if you were to say our Mishnah matched with the Tanna Kama, kasha matanot. The problem is matanot le'avyonim. And I did not explain this correctly in class. I want to be more precise in my language this time. I'm not going to amend the Mishnah. That comes later. So here's the actual explanation of this part. The problem is that the Tanna Kama in our Mishnah, the Tanna Kama in the Breita talks about just Megillah. Right? This is the Tanna Kama in the Breita, chutz mikra Megillah here, and our Mishnah talks about kriyat Megillah umatanot le'avyonim. That's the exception. So I'm just going to highlight this so you notice it. So the problem is that in the Breita, the Tanna Kama says that the only thing that has to be repeated in the second month is Mikra Megillah, but in the Mishnah, it says that both Kriyat Megillah and Matanot Le'avyonim have to be repeated in the second month, so they don't exactly match. So if it were Tanna Kama, the problem would be the Matanot Le'avyonim. Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi, if you wanted to say that our Mishnah matched with Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi, Kashinami Mikra Megillah. That would also be a problem with Mikra Megillah, because he doesn't think that you have to read Megillah again in the second month at all, and our Mishnah obviously did say you have to reread Megillah in Adar Bet. Rashbag, if you wanted to say that our Mishnah matched with Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Kasha Seder Parshiot. The problem would be Seder Parshiot, because Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says you have to repeat Seder Parshiot, you have to repeat those 4 Parshiot in the second Adar, and our Mishnah, according to the assertion of our Gemara, the Zev Zeh Shavin part, our Mishnah believes that you don't have to repeat Seder Parshiot in the second month, because that's part of what it means when it says they're equal in all ways. The two Adars are equal in all ways, except for Megillah and Matanot Le'avyonim. So the Gemara believes that the Mishnah believes that Seder Parshiot would not have to be repeated in Adar Bet, and Rashbag thinks that Seder Parshiot does have to be repeated in Adar Bet. Okay, so now we need to solve this problem. We need to figure out, we're going to have a few different answers. We need to answer the question of, according to whom is our Mishnah? Le'olam Tanna Kama. It's for sure Tanna Kama. It's forever we're going to say it's Tanna Kama. We can stand by that. V'tana mikra Megillah, v'hu hadin matanot le'avyonim. For sure matches, our Mishnah for sure matches with Tanna Kama. And it's just that when the Tanna Kama said chutz mikra Megillah, he meant mikra Megillah and matanot le'avyonim, deha talia, because the two are interdependent. We learned earlier in the Gemara that we always give out Matanot Le'avyonim when we read Megillah. So they're so closely linked, the Tanna Kama didn't even have to say Matanot Le'avyonim. Obviously, when he said we read Megillah, he meant, and we also give out Matanot Le'avyonim. So maybe our Mishnah actually is exactly the same as Tanna Kama. That's answer number 1. Answer number 2, the Ibayit Ema, and if you want, I will say, so here's an alternative reading, Le'olam Rashbag. Actually, our Mishnah for sure matches up with Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Le'olam Rashbag he. And our Mishnah is just missing some words. It's missing something. The hachiktani, and here's what it should really say. Ein bin arba'asar sheba'adar harishon le'arba'asar sheba'adar hasheni ela mikra Megillah umatanot. It should actually have said, I'm going to underline this just so you'll know it's a text. It's good to compare it with the original text of the Mishnah. There is no difference between the 14th of Adar, so not between Adar Harishon, but between the 14th of Adar Harishon and the 14th of Adar Hasheni, except for Mikra Megillah and Matanot Le'avyonim. Hali inyan hesped v'tani zev v'zeh shavin. And then it makes sense, the fact that Rashbag goes on to say, therefore, right, behold, when it comes to the matter of eulogies and fasts, the two are exactly the same, right? So you treat the 14th of Adar Rishon and the 14th of Adar Sheni the same way. But the difference between them is Mikra Megillah and Matzanot Le'Avyonim. That's a rewriting. That's not what Rashbag says in our version, but it is the rewriting, and it makes Rashbag work with our Mishnah. Ve'ilu Seder Parshiot Lo Mairi. And Seder Parshiot is just Lo Mairi. It's not discussed, right? We can just sort of eliminate that. That wasn't actually in our Mishnah at all. That was the Gemara's addition. And so we can just say our Mishnah doesn't deal at all with Seder Parshiot because it doesn't deal with the month of Adar as a whole. It just deals with the 14th of Adar. And your first question now at this point is to make a chart the way we did in class. You can set yours up differently if you want to, and record the position of the Tanna Kama, the position of Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yossi, the position of Rashbag, and also the position of our Mishnah. We didn't put that in there in class. And then also, in addition to that, that's like one set of information that goes into your chart. The second set of information is how Rav Papa explains each of these positions so that it does apply to Seder Parshiot. And then the third level on the chart is how the Gemara at this point, with its different answers, explains the positions. So how we can say that our Mishnah works according to the Tanna Kama, how we have to interpret the positions to do that, and how we can say that our Mishnah works with Rashbag, how we have to reinterpret the various positions to do that. I'll have a description written up of this question for you also, so if that was unclear, you can also read the description at the bottom of the sheet. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Avin. Rabbi Chia bar Avin said, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan said, Hilchata k'Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel. The halacha is like Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, Shamar Mishum Rabbi Yossi, who was speaking in Rabbi Yossi's name. Okay, so the halacha is actually like Rashbag. Again, once you make your chart, you'll be able to see exactly what that means. I will say that for the purposes of halacha as it's enacted today, the fact that the 14th of both Adars are considered these happy days means that we don't say Tachnun on the 14th of Adar in the first Adar, even when we have a second Adar. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said, Vishnehen mikra achad zarshu. Both of them, we'll see more what the both of them is in a minute. Both of them were learning out from a single verse. Bechol shana v'shana. The verse is Bechol shana v'shana. We've seen this verse before, and your second question is, where have we seen this verse before? In what context have we seen this verse? Why was it discussed previously? Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi savar. Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi holds Bechol shana v'shana. That verse, Ma kol shana v'shana adar hasamuch l'shvat, afkan adar hasamuch l'shvat. Just as every year the Adar in which we celebrate Purim is the one that comes right after Shvat, so too here the Adar that is samuch to Shvat is the one that should be emphasized. V'Rashbag savar, I think that's a typo and should be Rashbag. Bechol shana v'shana, in each and every year, ma kol shana v'shana adar hasamuch l'Nisan, afkan adar hasamuch l'Nisan. It's kind of silly. It's just the opposite reasoning. Just as every year we celebrate Purim in the Adar that is right before Nisan, so too this year, right, the leap year, we celebrate in the Adar that is right next to Nisan. This is the end of the homework video. Again, the questions will be recorded on the homework sheet, but I wanted you to get at least this far in the Gemara, so please make sure you're familiar with the material up to this point in the Gemara. We won't be going over this material again in class. We'll be starting from the next part. Here's the next part. Bishlama Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Eliezer bar Rabbi Yossi's position kind of makes sense, works for us. Mistaber tama de'ein mavirin al hamitzvot. His reasoning makes sense because of the general principle of ein mavirin al hamitzvot. This is a general sort of halachic concept. I'm highlighting it just so you'll know that it's a thing. Ein mavirina ha-mitzvot means when there's a mitzvah opportunity that comes your way, right? A fleeting mitzvah opportunity, something that you're not going to be able to do. If you wait too long, you won't be able to fulfill that mitzvah. Then you have to do it, right? So that would apply to Adar coming up and the 14th of Adar coming up. You got to do it. You can't wait. So his reasoning makes sense. Ella Rashbag my taima. But Rashbag's reasoning, what's Rashbag's reasoning? Right? Rashbag has this idea that you can't fulfill anything in the first month. Everything has to be repeated in the second month. So what's his reasoning? Right? Ein mavirina ha-mitzvot, isn't it like good to do it? When the first time that the opportunity comes around. Amar Rabbi Tabi. So Rabbi Tabi answers this question. Talmud Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Misamech geula legeula adif. The reasoning of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel is, I'm going to translate literally and then I'm going to say what it means, is that putting geula close to geula, lismoch, to put them together, is preferable. Right? It's good to put the geula of Purim close to the geula of Pesach, so we really prioritize the second Adar much more so than the first one because we want to have Purim close to Pesach. Rabbi Elazar Amar Talmud Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Mahacha. Rabbi Elazar has a different suggestion for the reasoning of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. He says that it comes from this pasuk, not from B'chol Shana V'Shana, but from a different verse. Dichtiv, as it says in the pasuk, L'kayem et igeret hapurim hazot hashenit, to uphold this second igeret hapurim, this second literally letter of Purim, which is mentioned in Esther, the letter that's sent out by Esther and Mordechai to all the Jews, telling them how to celebrate. So the idea here is that the shenit, even though this isn't really what it's talking about in the context of the Megillah, but it's a hint that sometimes you're going to need to read the Megillah in the second Adar. It's a hint to the second Adar. Now the Gemara is going to comment on this. I'm going to comment on these psukim. V'itz tzarich lemichtav hashenit, v'itz tzarich lemichtav b'chol shana v'shana. Okay, it needed to write. Literally, it needed to tell us about this verse of hashenit. Both verses are necessary, right? These were suggested as two alternative motivating psukim for Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, but actually you need both of them, and the Gemara is going to explain why. Because if he was just learning from the verse of B'chol Shana V'Shana, right, from these words in the pasuk, Hava Amina Ki Kushan, then you would have thought that you basically would have had the same question. Ki kushan means like our question, literally like our question or like our problem. So if it had just said we would have had the same question as we had before of why not having it next to Shvat, right? If it just said B'chol Shana V'Shana, okay, so you should have it next to Nisan, but you should also have it next to Shvat because that's how it is in most years. So you'd remain with the same question. Kamashmalan hashenit. Therefore, it came to teach us hashenit, right? Therefore, we have this verse that it's not only important that it be close to the months that it's usually close to, but it's important that it be the second Adar. The Iash mi'inan hashenit, and if we had only if it had only taught us about hashenit, this verse of the second one, havamina b'tchila barishon uvasheni. Then I would have thought, Hava Amina, right? I would have thought, or I would have said, that Lechatchila, right? That from the outset, you should do Purim the first month and the second month. If you had only had the word Hashenit, you would have thought, okay, I should do it again in the second month. But I would have thought that I should do it in both months. Kamashmalan B'chol Shana V'Shana. So that's why it comes to teach us B'chol Shana V'Shana. No, you should do it the way you do it every year, right? Even in a time when there's two Adars, you should do it the way you do it every other year, which is to say you only do it once. Now the Gemara has a question. V'Rabbi Eliezer b'Rabbi Yossi, Hai Hashenit, Mai Avidlei. So for Rabbi Eliezer Bar Yossi, who you'll remember from the Breita, right? He has a different opinion. So presumably the pasuk Hashinit, the pasuk with Hashinit in it, Igeret Hapurim Hazot Hashinit, doesn't work for him the way that it works for Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. So, Hai Hashinit, my Avidlai, this Hashinit word, my Avidlai, what does it do for him, right? How does he interpret this word? Because he doesn't think that it has to do with reading again, because he thinks you just do it all in Adar 1 and then you're done. So how does he interpret this verse of Hashinit if he doesn't read it the way that Rashbag does? And the answer is, Mi Baile, it's necessary for him, he needs it, look at Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, for that which is said by Shmuel Bar Yehuda. To Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, because Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda said, Batchila kavua b'Shushan, ulevasof b'chol ha'olam kulo. Initially, they established it, Kavuha established it, meaning they established Purim, in Shushan, meaning initially Purim was established only as a holiday for Shushan, Ulevasof, and in the end they established it as a holiday for the whole world. And that came from the Igeret HaPurim Hashinit, from the second one. So there's this teaching of Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda that says that at the beginning it was just in Shushan and then they spread Purim to the whole world. And Rabbi Eliezer Bar Rabbi Yossi uses the pasuk of Hashinit to support that teaching, to say, yes, that's in fact true, and that's what's implied by the word Hashinit. Okay, we'll stop here. Again, you only have homework on the first part of this video, but I hope you'll watch the whole thing so that you'll understand this entire piece of Gemara.